And welcome to Successful Recall Strategy. We've got a few seconds to go. We will start right on 1 o'clock Melbourne time. Pleased that everyone is able to come along. This is in response to our database discovery webinar last week, which talked about how can we find all the hidden gold that's already in our database rather than always searching out for more new patients to come into the practice. And so today, Successful Recall Strategy. Next week, managing your incomplete treatment, more money that's left in your database. And then the third week, so another week down the track, is reactivating your inactive patient base. And so we've got these as a bit of a webinar series. And so if you've missed out on any of them, just send through a chat or an email to us and we'd be more than happy to share previous recordings with you. Today, we are talking about successful recall strategies. This is an important one, Mandy, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And you've got a photo of my husband on the first slide. So nice. And having a successful recall strategy is so important to the foundations of your business or dental practice, ensuring that those patients, that we have as many returning patients as possible, that they understand and they're educated about why it's important to come to the dentist regularly and all those sorts of things. So we're going to work through that during this presentation.
Beautiful. Fantastic. And just a reminder to everybody at our webinars, you are free to interrupt, ask questions, chat, do whatever you'd like, share your own experiences, do whatever you would like, because we are here to really help you and answer any of your questions. And did you say something, Meady?
Yeah, and the more you interrupt, the less we have to listen to Julie. So that
So if there are no questions, we know they're totally enthralled by everything I have to say. So first of all, quickly about us. We are Dental Business Mastery. This is a collaboration of two experienced long-time dental practice management consultants, which is Amina and myself. And we provide team training and strategic dental practice advice to help your dental practice team members and you as a dental practice as a whole achieve greater levels of success. So do go to our website, pop it back into the chat again throughout the sorry, I was distracted by the little messages coming through. Throughout the webinar, we'll keep adding the website because there's a bunch of resources and free resources at that can really help you achieve great success. What we're going to cover today is why recalling patients is important, understanding your patients, and you'll start to see the relevance of that when we're talking about how to communicate with them to bring them back in, assessing the different communication methods that are open to us, such as SMSing, phone calls, etc. We'll go through how you can build your unique recall strategy that's going to help your dental practice patients attend those appointment times. And we're going to go through a whole bunch of tips to improve your recall booking rate. So first of all, let's talk about why we recall patients in the first place. And we want to talk about this because there might be younger team members participating in this webinar or having this webinar shared with them. And this is an important aspect of it. Unless we understand the big picture of why we do something, we may not be as committed to doing it. And so these are the reasons why recalling patients is important. Number one, it builds patient loyalty. We're encouraging these people to come back to us over and over again. Think of yourself, your habits at a hairdresser, for example. You tend to go back to the same place over and again because you need regular haircuts and hair care. But if it is something far more random, you may go, I'll try this place over here, and then later on I might try over there. So when we're bringing people back and encouraging them to come back in for their 6-monthly appointment times and come to us for those, that does build patient loyalty. We'll talk a little bit more about why that patient loyalty is enormously valuable as well.
You made a good point a few seconds ago, Julie, when you mentioned, that we may not completely understand why we're doing something. And it just made me remember that in the early days, 16 years old in a dental practice, and we're told to send these reminders out to these patients on this list. The only thing going through my head, maybe I was silly, but was get the cards out to the patients on the list. No one explained to me what the whole objective was and how it affects our business and all those sorts of things. So had someone said the whole idea behind this is that we get these patients returning and that keeps us in business and keeps you in a job and blah, blah, blah. My thoughts about it would have been, you know, I later worked it out, but initially it wasn't obvious, although it might have appeared obvious to others.
Yeah, absolutely. And it does bring about stronger compliance. And so I agree. I think that's a great thing to do. I was just unshared my screen so I could turn off my notifications for WhatsApp. So I've done that now. The second reason why recalling patients is important is it promotes oral hygiene and health awareness. So this is probably the most basic reason. This is what we, part of what we do. We help dental patients be healthy. And so we get to promote that every 6 months to them. It also prevents oral health issues from escalating, even possibly appearing in the first place. If we're seeing all of a sudden, there's some lesions on the teeth developing, we can prevent decay from happening if we go through that oral hygiene awareness with them. But also we are trying to identify areas before they get too bad, before they need to become more expensive and more difficult to attain these sort of solutions for their oral health issues. And so it stops them from escalating. Revenue generation is a big one as well. That if you take out all the money that a dental practice achieves from recalls, that's going to be a big chunk of their turnover. And so it adds to our revenue. So it's a very smart from a business perspective. There's certainly a professional duty of care. And this is one that, this is good for all the team members to know. We do have a duty of care in the way that we manage our dental patients. And indeed, there was over in America, I've got to look it up because it was reminded to me just the other day, over in America, I think there was a basketball player or some sort of sports player that had sadly passed away from some sort of issue. I think it may have been cardiac, but it was brought back to the fact that he had periodontitis that was never diagnosed. And so there was a liability for the dental practice to pay. And you think, wow, that's really interesting. So we certainly have a professional duty of care to make sure that we are identifying all the oral conditions and managing those, but also to bring them back every 6 months so we can make sure that they're still on that path to health, optimal health. And there is the expectation as well that patients know that, given all their past experiences at other dental practices, they will remind me when it's time to come back in again. That's their duty now. And so that's our professional duty of care as well. And it increases the lifetime value of patients. And when we're talking about lifetime value in this specific area, we're talking about the financial contribution they make to the lifetime value of the practice, or their own lifetime value of the practice that they contribute. We want to talk a little bit about this because it helps us identify Amina's and my 3 categories of dental patients and how that's going to play a role in the rest of this webinar as well. And so we have 3 categories of patients, and every dental practice has a percentage of each of these in their practice. The transients, the loyals, and the perpetuals. So the transient patients are those that come in for urgent care. If you said to them you should come every 6 months for a checkup, if they don't already do it, they won't start doing it now just because you told them to. Quite often you can say to them in these urgent appointment times, I see other areas of problems that are quite obvious. You should come in for a checkup, knowing full well they may not even book in for that. They really are the type of patient that don't really mind who they see because they come so rarely, and whenever they do go along to the dentist, it's because they've got a breakdown of a tooth or they're in pain or for whatever other urgent reason. They'll come into you that one time to get that managed. If they have another toothache a couple of years down the track or another urgent appointment time that they need, they'll ring you, but if you can't see them at the time that suits them, no skin off their nose, they'll just ring the next dentist down the road. So we've all got transient patients in our patient base. We see all these patients. We're not saying see one over the other, but we see all these patients, but that's the transient group. The second category of patient is the loyals. And these are the patients, they don't come every 6 months for checkups and cleans, but for all of their dental care, the random checkups and cleans and all of their urgent care, and maybe they feel like they have tooth whitening one day, they'll only come to you. They've got that relationship with you and they only want to come to you guys. And so if they do ring up and you can't see them on the day and time they want, that's no problems. when is the next time I can see my dentist? And they'll still hang around and wait to make sure that they come to you guys. The third category are the perpetuals, and they are just like the loyals, but these are the ones that do come every single 6 months for their regular checkups and cleans. And meaning we know these ones, don't they? They freak out. They go, oh my God, it's been 8 months. I don't know what I've been doing with my life. I've got to get in.
Yeah, and they get used to doing it. And then you also, if you come that regularly, you do start to feel a bit yucky, and you feel like you need to have your clean done and all those sorts of things. So it just becomes a habit, something they do all the time.
Yeah, that's it. And so when we're talking about the lifetime value of patients, when we're encouraging them to come every 6 months for their regular checkup and cleans, you look at these 3 categories. And a bulk of the practice turnover, is it coming from the transients? No. Is it coming from the loyals? No. It's coming from the perpetuals. And so doing what we can to really nurture our existing perpetual patients, encourage our loyal patients to become a little bit more perpetual in nature. And of course, when we're trying to appeal to new patients coming into our fold, then what can you do to help encourage perpetual patients who are already being perpetual somewhere else to come over and be perpetual with you instead? And so these are the 3 categories. And so because of the fact perpetual plays such a significant role in the viability of your dental practice, that's, again, why encouraging 6 monthly appointment times is terrific for your practice. There we go. Now, this is a thing that I saw years ago from Carolyn Dean, the marketing queen here in Australia for dental practices. And she was conducting a webinar, and this figure really surprised me. Now, there's a lot of factors that will influence. This isn't just a hard and fast rule by any means, because it depends on how you're attracting new patients, how many perpetual patients you have in your practice, all the things in the world it depends on. However, as an indicator of how many times should we be recalling our patients, how many reminders should we be sending, this was very relevant, I feel. So after the first reminder was sent out to patients that needed to come in for their general checkup and clean, they had a 50% booking rate. But then after a third reminder is sent, that jumps all the way up to 85%. Now, even if this is not accurate in terms of what you've experienced in your practice, what this does to me is identify the importance of reminding more than just once, and possibly more than twice, actually going to that third step of the reminder process. We always have to be very careful, though, Minnie, don't we, to not be harassing our patients. Oh, this is the 18th reminder I've had.
Exactly. It needs to be a well-balanced and thought-out approach that suits the patient demographic in your practice and that doesn't fall into harassment.
And so we are going to be helping you build out a recall strategy that does have the 3 reminders in it because of this. Because if there is such a substantial jump, why wouldn't you do it? And we'll be also telling you how to track these sort of results that you're getting, so you can see in your practice, do we actually experience this same kind of result after a third reminder? If we're not, do we change how we're reminding people, or do we just leave it to the 1 or 2 that you're already doing? We want to assess the communication methods because in every dental practice, we have a range of different age demographics represented. And it's important for us to understand the different methods of communication and the different levels of engagement that they actually have. So you can, like if you've got a large amount of you might be close to an elderly care facility, it might be a more older demographic in your area. So you've got a lot of older citizens as patients, then you need to be really steering clear of some communication styles because it's not the way they like to interact. However, there's a practice, one of our client practices is in an area which is very close to a university, a large university. So overwhelmingly, most of their patients are young students. They love that kind of messaging. And so we need to be aware of this in terms of who are we trying to appeal to in this messaging, so what makes the greatest sense. So just be aware of people who were born before 1945, called the traditionalists. Sometimes they're called other things, but we'll call them traditionalists here. They far prefer person-to-person interaction, face-to-face. And their secondary form of preferred interaction is over the telephone. So one person talking to another person. We go all the way to the other end of the spectrum, to Gen Z. How should they like personal interaction? They hate it. And there's that classic story, Media, that I heard on a podcast where someone said in the dental game, they said that they would ring up a patient who is younger and to talk to them about their recall or their confirmation of the appointment time or whatever. And it goes straight to their voicemail. And that person's voicemail says to them, "Why are you calling me? Just text me."
Exactly. I don't even know what face-to-face interaction is.
Yeah. And there's actually a level of social anxiety, I think, more so with younger people than with older people, where they actively try to avoid it. And
I've got a 14-year-old daughter, and she was concerned about something with a friend before school on Monday. And I said to her, why don't you call her over the weekend and have a chat about that? Just ask her. Oh my God, you are so weird. We don't do that.
It's a crazy thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
So the most efficient way of communicating, the most engaging way we can communicate will work for a large section of your patient base. For others, it may not work as well. So recognise that there is a generational preference of communication, but we've got to layer it on top of that how effective these methods of communication actually are. And so when we're looking at the phone call, this used to be higher. The answer rate, or the open rate, if you like, but the number of people that used to answer a telephone call was very high back in my day, back in the 1920s, when I was calling people for recalls. Most people would answer. They were either at home or they were in an office, and they would answer their phone. Nowadays, though, I looked up a figure, only 52% of phone calls are being answered. And it goes straight to voicemail. And then the problem with voicemail, people aren't listening to their voicemails. I don't listen to my voicemails. I do it maybe once a month, and I'm like, oh, crips, I really got to build that back into my process to actually listen to these voicemails, but I'm more inclined just to bring the person back. So phone calls isn't getting a strong open rate anymore like it used to, pretty neutral there. But the impression when we do get to speak to people, it's very engaging. We can identify barriers to them booking in, we can manage them on the spot, we can answer any questions that they've got, all the things that we can't do with other modes of communication. So phone calls are fantastic from an impression or engagement perspective, not great for the open rate perspective. SMSs, huge open rate. I think it's like 97% open rate in the first 5 minutes of sending the text message. It will be opened. The impression that is left, very low. How often are we finding that SMS confirmations and reminders, patients that just don't even read them?
Yeah, it happens a lot. And you've got to be careful, particularly with the wording in the first few words. It has to, come across as important to them with the first couple of words that they say on their phone. And I think that happens to all of us. So
they do a very quick scan read, but they don't read the details of it. So even though SMS is a fantastic way of messaging somebody, the SMS by itself has to be worded very, very carefully in order for it to have a stronger impression. Because the other problem is that once that SMS has been read and it falls down below the thread, do you ever go back and look at them again? Most people don't. Out of sight, out of mind. And so it ends up being a transient message that flows very quickly through their consciousness.
Yeah, so a lot of messages from dental practices will come out, be received with the first few words showing this is a friendly, it's not very engaging.
Confirmation.
Whereas if it perhaps had the name of the dental practice and your appointment or something like that, you might pay more attention to that.
Yeah. How about emails? Open rate on emails, unless they're expecting it, very, very low. And so the current figures are anywhere between 27 to 32% of emails are opened. And so do not rely on this form of communication if you're sending a 6-monthly reminder. You can always send an email after you've sent them a text message saying, look at your email inbox, I've just sent something to you, you could increase your email open rate. But if it's just a random email that they're going to be sent, very low open rate. However, once they do open it, is it engaging? Yeah, because if you can put a whole bunch of text there, you can put links, upload documents as PDF downloads, all the things. You can put links to videos of telling them why recalls are so important. So once they've opened it, it's a strong impression, but because it's such a low open rate, not advised really for dental 6 monthly appointment time reminder emails, unless you are really in a business district and you might be in the centre of Sydney or Melbourne or Adelaide, and everyone around you is actually working in offices and they're opening their emails all the time. Different story. But generally for family dentistry, there's not a strong open rate. And they don't always open them on the day. It might be like, oh, I got something 3 weeks ago and I only look at my emails every couple of weeks. And so sometimes when we are active in our own email, we forget how inactive a lot of people actually are in their email. How about letters, physical letters? A big one, a big heavy face on both open rate and impression. Overwhelmingly, people do open letters that are addressed to them. They haven't got actual figures, that they're thinking it's around 98%. And the impression, once you've opened that letter, it's right in front of you. Physical always leaves a stronger impression on our brain than digital. And so we can include a lot of information there. We can still include links for them to type into their search engines later on, but you can include a very well worded letter or a brochure or what have you. So letters are a great way to go because excellent open rate, excellent engagement. Sometimes they're shied away from because there's the added cost and manpower in order to get these ones out. Social messaging, such as Facebook messaging, Instagram messaging, all the things. Open rate, very low, because only a very small section of your patient base are interacting with messaging, Generation Ys and Generation Zs. So the open rate is low when you're looking at your whole patient base. The impression is also very low. It falls into that SMS category where it's a transient thing. Once it goes out of your feed, out of sight, out of mind. So unless you are in that young demographic, students at a local university demographic, it may not be overall good for your broader patient base. So it's important to have a look at this from the perspective of what mode of communication are we going to use with our first, second and third reminders for the recall strategy. And this is all starting to hopefully formulate thoughts in your mind about how you're going to design your unique strategy. And when we go back to the different categories of patients as well, we can start to recognise the kind of messaging we need to deliver and therefore how we're going to send it through. If, for example, let's presume that the transients, we're going to fulfil our duty of care and send them one reminder. If they don't respond after that, any further communications will likely fall on deaf ears. With the loyals, we're trying to encourage them to do perpetual behaviour. So we're recognising them that they will likely ignore a number of recall reminders and then eventually come to one because they think it's been a bit of time. It's been at least a couple of years since I was last year. So it's the loyals from that perspective that need the multiple that will likely be the thing that gets up to the 85%. They're the loyals being convinced to come in this time. The perpetuals are either already in your appointment book because they booked it 6 months before, or they just need one reminder and they're like, oh, got to get on top of that. That's important. And so keep these things in mind when you're constructing your recall strategy. Who are we appealing to? Straight away, just the one first reminder is going to satisfy our transients, duty of care, also will satisfy our perpetuals. One reminder, I'm booking straight in. The rest of the strategy is, how do we get the loyals to come in this time? And so who's making up your loyal patient base? We're going to do 3 reminders because that's how much it's going to take for them to come in. We're going to assess who our patient base is and assess the mode of communication that we're going to use in order to make it as effective as possible. So how are we going to build the recall strategy? What mode or modes of communication will you use? What will your message be? What's the wording going to be? When will you deliver additional reminders? Is it going to be 1 week apart, 2 weeks apart, a month apart? How many reminders will you deliver? Are you going to go up to the 3 to see how things go? And importantly, how are you going to track progress? Because in order to identify whether your chosen strategy is actually working well for your practice, you need to see the cold, hard evidence in front of your face. Usually we just say to the receptionist, how things going? And she gives a presumption of how things are going. But it is an important aspect of your practice, and to have the actual figures is very, very helpful. Now, this is the first of some downloads that we've got for you. And this download is a fill-inable form here, where it takes you through each of the steps, step 1, 2, and 3. It's got the time interval in between each of those steps, and it's got how you're going to track. So you might say, step number 1, so we want it nice, quick, and easy to attract to do our duty of care for the transients, and to make sure that the perpetuals have the message, and so they're going to call straight away and book in. We're going to include, of course, everybody in this, because we're not going to section out each of our categories of patients. Everyone's going to get it, but we're really talking to the perpetuals here. The transients, all they need is the reminder. They won't respond to it anyway, generally. But let's really have the perpetuals in our mind when we're working out the messaging on this one. So the mode of communication is going to be FMS. The message is going to be whatever you decide it ends up being. We've got some hints around that in a minute. And the tracking method is going to be, for example, Amina and I are very experienced with Dential Windows, and each of the software programs will have a way of tracking this. And so that's one of our big suggestions as well. Do, at some point, contact your software provider and get an understanding of how you need to manage the data around your patients in order for them to be in your recall process and be maintained in that recall process. Because quite often they drop out of the system and you're none the wiser until you're saying, oh, God, the number of recalls we're sending out is actually reducing. It's been reducing over the last couple of years. And then you get a database checkup happening. It's like, oh, man, there's been a whole bunch that should have been sent reminders that haven't been. We've missed them. And so do contact your software provider to get a really great understanding of how this space is managed in your dental software. So Dential Windows, we will go back into the recall list and click on the tick box. What's it called again, the tick box? What's the wording of it? Lapsed. Lapsed patients. And that will take out all the patients that did respond to that SMS and have actually got an appointment time in the system. And you'll be left with the remaining list. And the remaining list will be your transients, loyals. And so now we don't have to worry about appealing our message to the transients. They don't care anyway. So now we have in our mind the loyals. Put yourself in the shoes of a loyal patient. Don't come every 6 months for your checkups and cleans. Don't come every year. You may come every 2, 3, 4, 5 years. What period of time after the SMS would be a good period to wait before sending the next message? What would you say, Mandy? 1 week, 2 weeks, a month?
Month.
1 month.
And does the lapsed, I mean, this won't apply to everybody, but in Dential Windows, does the lapsed treatment list work with automation?
No.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
And yeah, Minnie and I aren't a big fan, especially Minnie. She's really got me on board with this because she's shown me the evidence. If you're on Dential Windows and you've got your recalls automated, it seems to be quite problematic. So it's worth your while shifting back to a manual system. They'll fight you tooth and nail to take you out of
just tell them Julie told you.
But the only way you can make sure that your recall system is working well is for you to do it manually in the Dential Windows space. So we're going to wait 1 month, and then we're going to have the next communication. So we're trying to get the loyals to come back this time. It's just saying, come on, come. Is that enough? Maybe not. So with this one, let's send them a letter or a brochure in the mail. We've got a brochure that we can share with you. Let's send them a letter instead. And so the mode is letter. The Message is going to be the brochure, and how are we going to track that? Gets trickier on how to track these things. And so that might end up being more of a manual tracking while you're determining whether your strategy actually works. And so one of the things you can do is have little ways of identifying patients that book in pre-booked. So there's a little category that you can click off. They're a pre-booked client. This one called up to actually respond, because how often do we send a mail merge out, physical mail merge out, and then all of a sudden we get a flurry of recalls being booked in? They all get flagged as the ones that were likely to have responded from the letter. And so that could be your tracking process, so manual tracking. And then what about if the loyals still don't book in? What are we going to do? What period of time are we going to wait there, Meanie?
Another month.
A month. And then what do you think? Maybe a phone call?
Yes.
And then we'll do a phone call. And the message will be, wanted to make sure you that our address details are correct for you because you didn't respond to our recall reminder. Maybe you wanted to make sure that you give them a little incentive. I know it's been a little while since you were last in. We've got a little special offer at the moment where you get 10% off, or whatever the message ends up being. It could just be making sure that, I know it's been 2 years since your last recall appointment time. What about booking in now? And how often, Meanie, do we say those sort of things to patients, and they come back and they say, it hasn't been 2 years. And we go, yeah, it has. Wow, I had no idea. Yeah, I think I will book in.
Yeah, and I think that is a very powerful one to use on the phone, as well as any reason to return that's in their clinical notes. So if the dentist has left a note at the last visit that says that there's a watch on the lower right 6 or something like that, you can mention it that, Dr. Jones was keeping an eye on this particular area. I wanted to have a look at that after 6 months. It's now been about 10 months. So it'd be great to get you in and just check that that's all going okay.
Absolutely. That's great. And then we're going to do an overall tracking. How effective has our recall system been? Amina and I are huge fans, as most of you out there will be also fans, of booking as many of your patients in now for their 6-monthly appointment time. And which group are going to be the one that do that? Oops, wrong area. Go here. It's going to be your perpetual patients that book in 6 months prior. And I want to throw in here too that Sandy Purdue is an American consultant, dental practice consultant. What she said recently in one of her podcast episodes really rang true for me, that if you're encouraging all of your patients to pre-book their 6-monthly appointment times, because we all agree that's the good thing to do, she said, I don't want you to book all of them in. I want you to book the straightforward, easy ones in. Because when we start to try to convince the loyals and the transients to book in, they're the ones that end up cancelling later on or not turning up on the day. You can't find them to confirm them, all the things. So she's a big fan of booking sure things in 6 months, and I think that makes a lot of sense too. So that's just another thought to have in mind. So that download, in your follow-up email, you'll be sent the download, so you can utilise that in your dental practice. If you have any questions around that, please throw them in the Q&A or the chat. You can then tweak each area, tweak the mode of communication, the intervals, the messaging itself. So you start to understand what's going to end up being your way of doing things in your practice. So it takes a bit of testing and seeing at the start, but it's worth it while the time. Now we're going to go through some tips to improve the recall booking rate. As we said, pre-book wherever you can and have that bent towards pre-booking sure things for your perpetuals. They'll be the ones keeping those appointment times 6 months ahead of time. Give the patient the big why. So we know our why for the staff, Meanie, in terms of why we're recalling patients, but we need to be able to give the patients the why as well.
We absolutely do. And that extra powerful reason to return is something more. It almost feels like I'm just going to check my teeth. A couple of months will be neither here nor there. But if there does happen to be some other more compelling reason to come back, and you share it with them and remind them, then there'll be far more incentive to get motivated about coming back.
For sure. And just share with them the stuff that's going, as clinicians, share with them that's going up on in your brain. You might be saying to your patient, and this is a very common thing, you're right for 6 months. You may be saying that, but in your clinical notes, you've said things like keep an eye on the large filling, keep an eye on the gum recession, keep an eye on this, tell the patient all those things. You're not completely healthy right now. We're going to check for more health in 6 months. You don't need any urgent care right now, immediate care right now, but there are areas of vulnerability, which I'll tell you about because that's part of your incentive to come back for that 6 monthly visits because you understand why it's required. Also, try to avoid just saying 6 months, because a month will go by. They'll still think I've got to book it in 6 months, but a month, 2 months goes by. So it puts a little bit more weight on it when you say, we're now in March, I'd like to see you back in September. They're like, okay, September, more focused, more weight on that. So start saying the month they're due back instead. Definitely talk about the insurance incentive. Just yesterday, or was it today in the newspaper, health insurance rates are going up again. Like, it's just crazy, this huge ballooning out of the premiums that your dental patients are paying to their insurance companies. Encourage them, make them aware of ways to make sure they're making full use of that dental cover. Make sure they do come back every 6 months to be able to claim back some of the money that they do put away in these insurance companies. Provide booking links. And so if you're sending out an SMS, don't just send out the message, put the shortened URL, you can shorten down URLs to be quite short, add the booking link. So if they're interested at 2 o'clock in the morning when they're scrolling through their phones, they can just book in straight away. If you're emailing them, make sure the link is there. Put the link on their website, on your website, so then they can just jump straight in there, and there's a reason why they'll be on your website in a minute. So make sure you've got the booking link there. So provide as many breakdowns of barriers to them booking as possible. So they can do it at any time of the day or night, they can book in straight away. And as we say, that tip of contacting your dental software provider to make sure that you understand the complexity and nuance of your particular software system so it's working for you and not against you, and you don't find out until years later. Now, this is another download that we've created for you, and it is sent out. It can be sent in email as well, but we encourage, this is one that you can print up, send out physically. You can either have personalised letters. This is one that is a brochure that you could send out with the personalised letter, for example, but it has all the big reasons why a loyal dental patient may be convinced to come in this time. Things that are really relevant to the patient, not necessarily relevant to us, but things that really speak to the patient, such as the importance of the skull and cleaning so you don't have bad breath. Maybe they've gone back out on the dating scene and they're horrified by the thought they might have bad breath that they're not aware about. Yeah, I'm going into that skull and clean. The impact on their systemic health. And so when you remind them, did you realise the bacteria and health of your mouth impacts cardiac, impacts stroke, diabetes, all these other things? That is something compelling to them personally if they're suffering one of those conditions. Oh, gosh, I had no idea. I kind of forgot about this. I have to go back in for my 6 monthly appointment time. Remind them that we are assessing for dental breakdown, so we're catching things when they are not as big a deal and cheaper to fix rather than letting them wait and become more expensive. Maintaining previous treatment if they've had braces, if they've had implant work, if they've had any kind of major stuff, maybe cosmetic work done, remind them we need to keep looking at that to make sure it remains sound. So that's a good reminder. And, of course, that reminder about utilising their health funds. And, yes, treatment is cheaper and easier when it's identified early, these conditions identified early. And so all you need to do is utilise this download, and you can send that out to all of your patients as well. Here are some effective SMS messaging. Now, this is where, as Amina said at the start, we need to be very aware of what we're saying to patients, what message we are relaying to them, and making sure that it's relevant to that mode of communication. If we were sending them a letter, this would be way too short. A one-liner in the letter, way too short. But for an SMS, very good. We don't want these SMSs too long. We've usually got a character limit anyway. But here is what we did was put in ChatGPT. We're going to tell you a little bit about ChatGPT, if you're not already aware of it. ChatGPT, one of the wonderful ways it can be used for good, is helping you to identify how do we word this message so it's short, succinct, and engaging. And so we put that into ChatGPT. It said, hi, it's time for your next dental checkup. Book in now to keep that smile shining. What about, hey there, don't forget your dental health. Secure your next appointment now. So you can go with one of these or choose your own, modify them to be more aligned with the way you think the message should be. But the key is keep that message short, recognise they will be reading it in possibly a rushed, distracted mood and not be fully picking up on the words within the text itself. Oh, I don't have to do anything about that right now. I'll address that later. And all of a sudden it's out of sight, out of mind. The next step we took with ChatGPT is how can we make that even more engaging? And they came up with a good idea. Use emojis. If you can, use emojis. And so the tooth indicates instantly we're talking about dental. And so you can do that there. Maybe make it rhyme or chatty, a catchy phrase. They said, don't be late, don't hesitate. Your dental date is this. How about a fun fact? Did you know regular dental checkups keep your smile bright and your gums healthy? And so do be creative and think about, consider the message that you're sending by SMS because it is a low engagement rate after all. And use ChatGPT because it can provide very quickly ideas that you would not normally think about, and they are very useful. We've loved ChatGPT, haven't we?
We do. I love the emoji idea because the picture,
a great idea.
It's a whole picture tells 1,000 words kind of thing, you know?
Yeah, that's it. And asking them to confirm with a happy face or a sad face to reschedule. You don't want to encourage the reschedules, but the happy face to confirm, you could leave it at that, and that's pretty cute as well. I think a lot of the dental software systems, though, you have to have the Y or the yes to be able to be acknowledged, but you could just change that emoji out. Now, Amina and I have recorded 3 podcast episodes talking about the effective, powerful use of ChatGPT in your dental practice. And we're going to include those links in your follow-up email. We encourage you to listen to them because even though ChatGPT, it has its drawbacks, as everything does, we address those drawbacks, give you a bit of a different mindset around them because the benefits can be enormous, absolutely enormous. Now, this is another aspect that might be very helpful to improve the chances of your loyals booking in this time for their dental checkup, and that is creating a separate page on your website. Now, I did a bunch of research, Mini, earlier today just to see if I could find a dental practice's reason you should come in for recalls page. And either I'm doing a wrong search, which is possible, but I couldn't find any. I found that this is what we do on your recall, but not the reasons why recalls are suggested. And so it lends itself to have that as part of your promotion of recalls within your organisation, part of your strategy. Develop that recall page. You could have these pages closed, but why not have it open so everyone can actually read it? But then your SMS message as one of your reminders in the strategy could be more, hi, curious why dental recalls matter? Click here. And they click on that shortened URL and they go straight to your page where you've got a whole bunch of information, ideally video, part of it, because people watch videos more than they read nowadays. And that could be really all that's needed to tip some of your loyals into booking that appointment time.
Even a few bullet points of, some really important reasons why we should be.
That's it.
Returning to the dentist.
And so think about this as one of your steps in your SMS part of your recall strategy too. This could be the third. It could take place at the phone call, for example. This is another download. What you're talking about just then, the points that could be included on your reason for recalls page on your website. And so we'll click on the download there, and you will see it goes through a few more than just the brochure. The brochure is really designed to speak to the heart of the patient themselves. This has a little bit more information. Why dental recalls matter. Prevention is key. Early detection of dental issues. Personalised oral health advice. Maintaining fresh breath. Maximising health insurance entitlements. Impact on systemic health. Prevention of serious conditions. Long-term oral health and confidence. And then an invitation to schedule your appointment now, which is why having that scheduling link on your website is important, because if this has got them in the mindset, yep, I'm going to book in, you want to make it as easy as possible, no matter the time of day or night, to book straight in at that appointment time. And so, that's just the link to the website. We're going to put the website up in the notes again. Please share any questions or comments that you have so we can discuss them in the last few minutes. But do think about building out the strategy. It's going to take a little bit of work at the start, thinking about jamming with the receptionist. What do you think we should do? It should be a bit of a collaborative effort as well, so we can get different people's opinions to go into it. But do think about going those additional steps of changing your SMS messaging, getting that brochure and getting a bunch of those printed up so you can send out something physical. Creating that page on your website as well. And as we say, video is so much more impactful than just using words on that page, but certainly use the words as well, because sometimes people don't have the sound on when they're watching videos because they're watching it in the bus or in the back of a taxi cab or something like that. And so have those subtitles underneath if there is a video. But we are trying to get your mind around these. There are general steps that are encouraged. So maybe one of the general steps is that we remind everybody every 6 months, and that we pre-book, and that we use 3 reminders after, what the strategy itself is 3 reminders. But then the specifics around what you're going to design for your unique practice in your unique area, that's where an understanding of your patient base and of who you're speaking within your patient base, the loyals or the perpetuals, for example, it will help you enormously in how to craft that messaging around things. Oh, Janie's there too. Hey, Janie, I don't know if you're kind of live or have us playing in the background. Great to see you there, Janie, our beautiful Western Australian representative of Dental Business Mastery. Love it, love it, love it. Oh, and she's moved there. Is she going to say something? Or maybe I can take her off the thing so I can allow her to talk. So if you have any questions, please do send them through. As we say, this recording and the downloads and the links, and I'm just going to throw them in there at the moment. So if anyone's online, you can actually go into the ChatGPT episodes straight away. There they are. You can click them straight away, because ChatGPT, more and more, we're finding greater and greater uses for it. I think from my perspective, I think it makes me about 5 times more productive, just so you don't have to sit there and wait for inspiration or reread it over again, get someone to view it and edit it and all the things. And as we're getting more younger people into the industry, one of the things that is a bit of a gap now is proper use of the language in terms of sending people emails, for example. There sometimes is improper use of grammar and spelling errors and all the things. And whereas it doesn't matter so much for the younger generation, they forgive all of that. The older generation, it rubs them right up the wrong way. So we're going to continue hanging on in case anybody would like to discuss anything, share anything at all. And if you are online, and if you have got a page on your website already on why recalls are important, definitely do send it through, because I'd love to have a look at it. The other page that we think is a good idea to have on your website, and this might be one that you don't have a public page, it's just a link that you can send through to relevant people, is when people are always cancelling appointment times late. There's a lot of broken appointment times lately. And one of the ways you can really impart a bit of awareness around that to people who are specifically doing it themselves is to say, just have a quick look at this website. We'd love you to understand the impact it has on the practice when you do break your appointment time, because we'd love to keep you as a patient. So there's a whole bunch of things you can do on your website that can facilitate your existing systems. If no one has any questions, then maybe we should wrap it up. What I can do, actually, if people have got us going on in the background, I'm going to share my screen again just for the last few moments and jump onto, get out of this area. There we go. Jump onto the website. If you haven't been on the website for a little while, we've got a few additional things. So under tools and resources, we have a couple of calculators. So one of the common ones is the expense benchmark calculator. And so every now and again, I was getting questions of what is the accepted norm in terms of morning from WA, great ideas. Thanks, ladies. Thank you so much, Janie. You're a gem. We've got to actually set up a meeting and chat with you. We've got a WA issue, not issue, but we've got a WA thing that we need to talk to you about. And Michelle has written, how many times do you remind them before you stop? We are contacting patients twice before updating their recall for 6 months, where we contact them again. I'm just going to stop sharing for a moment since that's they focused on today's question. And we do suggest go to the level of 3 reminders in total, because if what Carol and Dean says is true, that's when you're going to get the greatest level of participation and response to it. And so then you're just choosing which mode of communication to use and what kind of messaging to deliver and what interval between each of those steps are. So we do suggest 3 reminders is good. 3 phone calls, for example, that would be harassment, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the 3 reminders and then move them to 6 months is a good initial strategy.
Yeah, that's it. And that's one of the keys too, making sure that they do default back into that 6-monthly process is absolutely important as well. So to give people time to add any more questions in there, I'm just going to share the screen again and just show you this calculator. And so, yes, dental accountants around Australia, when they do a lot of dental practices, they do come up with a process of you really should be allocating just this percentage of your turnover to marketing, this percentage to your consumable spend, this percentage to wages, for example. And that's exactly what this calculator does for you. The first section of the calculator is it provides you with a very quick snapshot of your number of I'm going to read through the thing. The number of staff members, therefore the amount of wages that you're spending in your organisation needs to make sense to the turnover that you've got. For example, if you have got 2 practitioners and you have a practice manager full-time and a receptionist full-time, that is out of step with what would be a profitable business. However, if you've got multiple surgeries going, practitioners going, all of a sudden, at some point, it will start to make sense to add in the stereo nurse, the practice manager, the additional team member. And so if you enter in the number of auxiliary team members, not dentists or practitioners, if you enter in, well, we've got 2 dental nurses and we've got 1 receptionist, so it's 3 auxiliary team members, then you should be turning over at least $1.08 million a year. However, if you've also got the practice manager, you need to be turning over $1.4 million to have that make sense in your practice. Once you do that section of the calculator, quite separate to that is this further insights calculator. And this is where you can actually enter in, our practice turns over $1.5 million. And given what the accountants advise in terms of benchmark percentages you should be outlaying for particular expenses, it tells you what your expenses payments should be. Marketing should be $30,000, no more. The consumable spend, $105,000 over the year, no more. Staff wages, $270,000, no more for the auxiliary staff wages. And so these are the side of things that we add into our website to hopefully make things a little bit easier for you and give you a bit more information on how you are managing your dental practice. We've also got the staff remuneration matrix. We've got the comprehensive dental practice examination, all free, just for you. We've got a whole bunch of podcasts and blogs and articles as well. So you are they're not shy, it's not shy of information. Any other questions? Beautiful. Well, we certainly hope you gained value from this webinar. We thank you so much for registering and even more so for attending as well. We do try to log on a bit earlier for all of our webinars for future reference. So if you have any things you want to raise, issues that you'd like to get our advice on, then you've got that availability to do that. But we'll wrap it up here. Thank you, Meanie.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for your company. Thanks, Janie, for dialing on in, our beautiful representative over there. And as you say, we'll give you a call in a few moments because we've got a question. So have a lovely afternoon, everybody, wherever you are. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Actually, there's one thing I will do is quickly go into our webinar for next week and give you the registration link. This will also be included, of course, in your follow-up email. But next week we are talking about incomplete treatment management. This is another area of your database where there is money residing in there, and how do we activate it again? And so the booking link, registration link for that.
You know, Julie, I just got an email from one of the attendees saying that their Zoom chat was disabled on their end, and they're not sure if it was an issue from our end or their end, but maybe why there weren't many questions.
Okay, no worries.
That's a good point. So
I'll make sure the other two webinars are set up with a chat enabled. That would be helpful. And so, so any of the chat, have they seen the chat messages that I've sent through? Maybe if Janie's there, she can let us know whether she's seen those chat messages come through.
And maybe I'll just put
and
our email.
Use the Q&A too as well if you've got any questions.
So info@dentalbusinessmastery.com.au. I know it's not ideal, but if you do have some further questions, feel free to shoot us an email as well. Actually, did I just send that to you?
You just said that to me, but I know our email address, but thanks anyway.
Very funny, Julie.
And so next week, managing those incomplete treatments with patients, making sure that we're doing everything we can to support them without harassing them either, but being careful enough in our communications that we are compelling and engaging is also a magnificent thing to do. Okay. So,
yes, the
webinar chat is disabled, but can you read ours, Janie? Can you read what I've already put in? I've just looked to see how I can.
No chat coming through. Yeah.
How helpful. Last week we used Webinar TV, a new platform, and that completely failed us. And then we didn't set up this one. Okay.
That's okay. Apologies.
Oh, yes, you can see my chat. That's good. That's good. Yeah. Well, at least the Q&A was available. But we'll get that rectified for next time. Well, thanks, Meanie. Thanks, Janie. Thanks, all the people that did turn up today. As usual, it's been about 30% turn up rate, which is usually the what we have experienced in the past. And just got one message on the email address. Thank you. Okay. Well, rest assured, your follow-up email, which will be coming out later on today, is going to have all the links that we have discussed. And I'm going to save my chat so I'm reminded about all the things that we did. Share and reach out anytime if you have any questions after we send that email out. You'll be able to respond to the email and give us a call, do whatever you need to do, get all your questions answered. Beautiful.
Thanks. You.
We'll see you next time. See you next week, everybody.
Okie doke.
For incomplete treatment management. See you later. Bye.